Hi everybody. So today I'm doing a video on what can you learn before you start your IT degree. If IT or any other tech degree is what you want to do, what can you do now that will help you get there, say if you're in high school. So this list is not in any particular order, and before we get started, if you like this stuff, please give me a like. It tells me that you want to see more of it. And if you like this stuff a lot, subscribe to my channel. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to start out with one of the most important ones, if you ask me, and that's Googling stuff. I know that may not sound like much, and you might already be good at it. If you are, then great. If not, next time you need to do something or you don't know something, try, instead of asking someone, Google it. Now, the reason I say that is because a lot of my job is Googling stuff. In my career, both in school and at work, a lot of times people have asked me something, and I've just Googled the answer to their question and responded. So maybe I look like a master of knowledge, but really I'm just better than the average bear at Googling. And you can get good at Googling by just using it in real life. There's a lot of non-programming things and non-technical things you can do by Googling it. And you can watch videos and you can read articles. That's part of the skill of Googling actually, is there's an ability that you might have or you'll build to know based on your needs, what kind of thing do I want to look at? So for programming, I can find documentation. That's one resource that might help me. I can also find things like Stack Overflow, where someone's maybe asked the exact same question I need to know the answer to, and someone else has answered it, or at least one that's similar. Now, that's why you can't just get good at Googling and then go into programming, because you do have to be able to read the answer and then be able to interpret, what is this person actually saying? Is this the same thing I'm actually asking for? You actually usually have to modify what you're doing to your own needs. Now, learning how to Google is a hugely important skill in programming. Don't let anyone else tell you different. If you think that programmers out there they just know everything, right? That's not true. I work as a programmer, as a developer, and I Google things all the time. That's true in other things in IT. That's true for a lot of different fields too. The truth is, Googling is just the way we look things up. It's just the way we research, and it's always been a big part of things. Before it was Google, you go to a book, and your ability to keep your books around and open up your book and read that thing that you learned a while back, or even look up something new, was really important. So Googling is that now. And almost everywhere you work, you're going to be able to Google. In an interview, you can't, that's true, but Googling is so important. So learn how to Google. Okay, so the next one is a little bit more vague, but here's what I'm recommending. So learn how to use normal programs on a computer. This can be something like, Microsoft Word or a video game even. So let's take a video game for example. What are you going to do here? You're going to install your game and you're going to play it. But then you're going to probably see things that you don't know how to do. So figure out how to do those things. That might be modifying the game in some way. This will introduce you to things like file types and things like that. Say you're using Microsoft Word. Well, there's definitely neat things you can do in Microsoft Word that you probably don't know how to do. So learn how to do that. Sometimes this is directly applicable, like in the file system example, and sometimes it's more just figuring out how to get a computer to do what you want. Now, yeah, it's somebody else's program, but let me tell you something. Unless you have two keys on your keyboard, you're going to be using somebody else's program when you develop things. And it's just important to get into that mindset of figuring things out for yourself on a computer. Now, this is where Googling helps, right? You can Google that thing you don't know how to do, and then you learn how to do it and you add it to your repertoire. So this is an important thing that you can do. It's hard to label, but just start doing it. Okay, so the next one I'm going to recommend is a little bit different. It's soft skills, and I've recommended this before. Soft skills basically just means dealing with people. Now, I'm sorry if you thought you were getting into a computer field to avoid dealing with people. That's not actually how it works. You're going to have to deal with people in a computer field. So basically what I recommend is working on this with your friends. Basically, be more personable. This is a difficult thing to do, especially if you're introverted, but it's worth it. Think of it as building your career. It's worth the effort to do it. And this is important because when you go to get a job, you're going to have to interview. And if you're not personable and you can't communicate, it's going to really hurt your chances of getting the job. Beyond that, you're going to want to make friends with your coworkers. You're going to need to have good relationships to work together. So being personable will help you with that. So yes, I've talked about this before, but work on your soft skills. Okay, so this one you might have a little harder of a time doing. I'll tell you how I pulled it off, even really not having a lot of money. And that's get good with computer hardware. Now, first we're talking about things like know the ports on your computer, like what's a USB, right? What kind of things can you plug into what can't you? Aside from that, I kind of recommend actually working on computers. Now, this is not the biggest one I'd recommend. If you're not looking to do a hardware-related field at all, then it might not be as important, but it's just good to get an understanding of how a computer works. Now, what I used to do when I was a kid is we would go by the dump, and I would actually find recycled computers. Another thing I would do is I would ask people for broken computers, see if they give them to me instead of throwing them away, and they would. And then I could fix them, sometimes with parts from other computers, and get them working, install the operating system. All that is good experience. It helps you work on a computer, which is what you're going to be doing in some way, shape, or form in IT. Okay, so this is the final one, and believe it or not, I think this is the biggest one. Get good at typing. It's one of the best things I ever did. And this is true for a lot of degrees, not just IT, but if you're gonna go into programming or something like that, it really helps for that. And guess what? You're also gonna have to do Mickey Mouse classes where you write essays and stuff. It's important. I took a class in high school that basically was learning how to type. It was called business or something, but the biggest thing it did was teach us how to type. So I barely hung on to this skill. I came out just barely having gotten over the pecking thing that you may do naturally. And the thing about the pecking thing is it is a lot slower. Even if you've morphed it into something that's a little bit faster, it's never going to be close to being a good typist. So I got the skill where I had my hands right. And I just barely hung on to it. And I started playing a game called World of Warcraft. Now, I had dial-up growing up. Yeah, guys, I'm old, and I also lived in the middle of nowhere. That meant I couldn't always voice chat with people. Usually couldn't. So I had to communicate and also play the game at the same time. So because I just barely hung on to those skills, I was able to continue building them. And I would get better at it because I would want to communicate quickly so that I could get back to fighting the enemies. So basically, I'm saying this is important for a few reasons. One, if you can type faster, it gives you an advantage in college and at work. In college, you're going to have to take tests, and some of them will be online. If you can type faster, that's better. You're going to have to write essays and papers and programs. So if you can type faster, you can do them faster. Maybe you'll even be able to type faster than you can think. That's a good thing. Either way, it's going to save you time. So there's a level beyond that, and that's that when you can do this, it makes you look like you know what you're doing. If you can type quickly, it makes you look like you know your way around a computer. It just looks good. It looks like you're skilled. Whether or not you know what you're doing, if you can type it fast, it looks good. There's more to it than that. You might have to take notes in meetings and things like that. Being able to type fast will help. If you're pecking, it's going to be really hard to take notes that way. And digital notes are always better because they're easier to store and they're easier to share and easier to copy paste. So basically, I'm telling you, learn to type. If you don't have a high school class that teaches it to you, you can teach yourself. There are free websites out there that teach you how to type. So this is my biggest one. That's why I saved it for last. Learn how to type. You might not think it's that important of a skill, but it is. And this is not just for IT majors or not just tech majors. Honestly, a lot of classes, you're going to do way better if you can type. A lot of professions, you're going to do way better if you can type fast. I even had a test in my master's degree recently where it was a timed essay test. I really feel like the test was just as much a test of how fast you could type as how well you knew the information given the time limit. So learn to type well. I know it's hard. You have to stick with it. You have to make sure that you don't do this thing, where you take the class and then you go back to your normal life and you go back to your old habits. You have to keep using it the right way. Now, the beautiful thing about that is once you start getting good at it, just a little bit, you'll want to do it. And the more you build it, the faster you get. And eventually you'll get amazingly good at it. And it feels good and it looks good and you'll feel good about yourself. Okay, guys, so that is my list. I hope this helped you. I'm sure I've left some things off of this. If you have any suggestions, put them in the comments. If you have any comments, put them in the comments. I hope you had a good time watching the video, and good night.